Chapter 154. Soaring. 3. Naturally, I was the only person in the room who had their eye on the Dakibi race, or goblins. The others all looked over the list and reacted in different ways. Dragons can be considered the pinnacle race. So I'm sure this dragon subrace is the best on the list. Look at the picture. They look just like dragons. Would you be able to communicate with them? There are many intelligent races. That's true. The Count eagerly perused the list. It was almost as though she was looking for the freshest apple in an open-air market. On the other hand, the Black Dragon Master furrowed her eyebrows slightly, and the heretic questioner's eyes twinkled. My lady. I have a question. I like students who are good at asking questions. It gives me a chance to show off. Heretic. I'm happy that you're willing to help me show off. Can our tower only pick one race? Good question. The lady smiled brightly and rubbed her face against her pillow. But that is also your choice. Oh. What do you mean, our choice? I'll now give a little something to the top 7. SRRK. A holographic window appeared in front of me. The lady who walks through the mirage sponsors you by giving a startup subsidy. You've received 700 race points. You currently have 700 race points. This wasn't a reward that I had known about before I returned. And as the lady said, it was a privilege that was only granted to the top 7 hunters. It was something that I wouldn't have even been able to dream of in the past, back when I didn't even have a title. Now, it's time for Sortie, our number 1, to choose. Of course, to be precise, it was a reward that we may receive, not one that we had already received. There are a total of 10 disasters that will occur from the 31st to the 40th floors. Every single one of these disasters will be devastating. Your main goal is to survive those disasters and help your civilization prosper. That's why you'll need to make a choice. Will you put it all in one place? Or will you distribute it? Put it all in one place? The number 1 hunter, the Sword Saint, frowned slightly at the strange phrase. What do you mean? It's exactly as it sounds. You can choose to spend all 700 points on a single race. Or each of you from 1st to 7th can choose a race. In that case, you would use 100 points on each. The lady chuckled slightly. Naturally, if you chose to put all 700 points into a single race, there would be much to gain. You would have a much better start. However, the risk also increases. If that race is destroyed, then you will all be destroyed with it. On the other hand, if we each pick a race, the risk would be spread out among us. Even if one race perishes, the other 6 would still have a chance. Note, the author put 5 here, which I'll assume was just a brain fart. You caught on quickly. The Sword Saint tapped his chin. The old man's eyes narrowed. In the past, the Flame Emperor, who was ranked 1, had probably chosen all-in-one without any hesitation. Then, he controlled the elf race as he pleased. The opinions of the other rankers and guild leaders were all completely ignored. But the Sword Saint was different. Evolution is the art of diversity and chance. The Sword Saint was a wise adult. The changes that a race undergoes in the wild are limitless. In order to survive in a brutal world, diversity is one of the first things that must be achieved. I don't know how valuable 700 points are, but I don't think it's worth more than 7 races. We'll choose to distribute, my lady. The lady looked like she was having a lot of fun at that moment. Are you sure? If you pick 7 different races, you will be able to fight among yourselves. It's possible that someone could stab someone else in the back. If you look at the big picture, fighting is just a part of the competition. The Sword Saint spoke calmly. Those without rivals will eventually fall. As he said that, the old man turned to look at me. No words were spoken, but I understood the message hidden in his eyes. The sword fight we just had. It was still vivid in our heads. I nodded. The Sword Saint also nodded his head. I'll say it again. Our tower chooses to distribute the points. Good. The lady who walks through the mirage welcomes your choice. Then, each of you from 1st to 7th will be able to choose a race to rule. By the way, guys, you are not allowed to select one race multiple times. This means that if someone selects a race, no one else can choose it. The lady then sat on one of the chairs in the cafe. Without any of us realizing he'd disappeared, Hamustra returned with a coffee. As she took a sip of a smoothie that was filled with chocolate chips, the lady winked at us. Take your time. It's fine even if you want to deliberate for 120 years. There's no specific time limit for selecting a race. There wasn't a need to think that much about it. The number 1 hunter, the Sword Saint, was the first to make his selection. I choose the pure race. Sad sighs flowed from different parts of the room. The pure race. They were similar to humans like us. Although they didn't have any special traits, we would be more familiar with them than any other race. There must have been a lot of hunters who wanted them as well. Well, that's a good choice. What will you choose, Death King? The lady turned to me. The hunters in the room also turned to look at me. Everyone was looking forward to what I'd choose. Zombie. Bei Huryong pulled at his hair. I'd rather you picked something else, zombie. Even actual zombies would be better. What about elves? They have good potential. They look good, have a long lifespan, and have fairly high magic power too. Let's go with elves.
Yeah.
Elf. I spoke in a solemn tone. I choose the Dakibi race. You psycho. Nutcase. Crazy bastard. Bei Huryong cried out as he rolled around in the air. Below him, all of the hunters in the room made a expression in unison. Dakibi race? The Black Dragon Master decided to be the group's representative. What's that? If you look at the list, it is entry number 103. 103? 103. My companions all began to look through the list. And after scrolling for a while, everyone became quiet. The Black Dragon Master rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand. Did she think that she'd read something incorrectly? But she was fine. We were all the same. She saw what I saw, and I saw what she saw. Plus. Dakibi race. Extinction grade A, very dangerous. Proverb, Karak. Gorak. Description, a race with every ability spanning across the lower ranks. In a word, they could be said to have low rank compatibility. They have less intelligence than the pure race, less combat power than the noble race, and less magic power than the blood-sucking race. It's amazing! No matter what field you choose, you will find that the Dakibi race is extremely compatible. From the perspective of most races, the Dakibi race is not pretty. It is a race that completely lacks beauty. That is the best way to describe the Dakibi race. All races, from the pure race to the Dakibi race themselves, consider Dakibis as ugly. Ugly. A little too ugly. Traits, victims of racial discrimination, tribal consciousness, greed. Plus. A group of images floated beside the description. And no matter how they looked at it, they couldn't see these creatures as anything but goblins.
Uh,
The Black Dragon Master gave a rare stutter. Death King?
yeah,
Aren't these goblins? It even says so in the aliases. Right. They're goblins. Are you insane? Hoo-hoo. I chuckled slightly at those words. The Black Dragon Master was looking at me like I was crazy. In fact, it wasn't just the Black Dragon Master. The other hunters were looking at me in the same way. How could these little crow tits understand the greatness of a rock? Everyone. I solemnly put my palms together like a lonely saint. The goblins, the Dakibi race, is the greatest race in the world. The Black Dragon Master's expression darkened a bit. Death King, you poor thing. I'm so sorry. Did I give you too much work to do lately? I'll be more considerate in the future. How about we cancel all the interviews for this month? Listen closely. Everyone. I began to preach about the greatness of goblins. Let's take a look at the description first. It says, no matter what field you choose, you will find that the Dakibi race is extremely compatible. Doesn't it? MHM. In other words, their low-rank compatibility can be demonstrated in any field. Whether it's intelligence or a case where the use of magic power is necessary, even if they might not be the best, they would be able to respond to any crisis. The expressions of my fellow hunters became a bit strange. It was as though they wanted to ask, is it really okay to look at it like that? More importantly, they are so pathetic. See? Every race thinks goblins are ugly. Even the description belittled them for being ugly. I feel like no one else like these children. I smiled sadly. Children who are persecuted and ignored by everyone. Who are unwanted. Doesn't that feel like the people here in our tower? That's right. The goblins are basically our self-portraits. It's not that the goblins are really ugly, but that our hearts instinctively ignore the goblins. Ah, everyone. I'm sad. We all have the hearts of goblins. In other words, there is an ugly goblin inside every one of us. The expressions of the hunters became even stranger. Their faces seemed to be asking, has this guy finally gone mad? Without being swept into their atmosphere of disbelief, I spoke firmly. The goblins will soar. They'll definitely soar. Don't you think they'll soar? I'm a prophet, okay? Do you not believe me? Ah. Fine. Fine. Do what you want. My extraordinary momentum made the Black Dragon Master retreat. For some reason, I felt like she was trying to make as much distance between us as possible, but it might have just been my imagination. After all, my friendship with the Black Dragon Master was strong. Of course. Ah ha 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 ha. The lady who walks through the mirage laughed heartily. Our dash, right? Fine. So you will be choosing the goblins, Death King? Yes. My heart is pure without even a sliver of doubt. As I expected. You are so. No. Never mind. Let's move on. The race selection continued up to the 7th place ranker. The list of our choices was as follows. Plus. First, Sword Saint, pure race. Representative title, human. Second, Death King, Dakibi race. Representative title, goblin. Third, Black Dragon Master, blood-sucking race. Representative title, vampire. Fourth, Heretic Questioner, snail race. Representative title, slug. Fifth, Count, fairy race. Representative title, Elf. 6th, Venomous Snake, Noble Race. Representative title, Sprite. 7th, Crusader, Ocean Race. Representative title, Mermaid. Plus. Crusader, who had been 9th for a while, had risen quickly in the past 2 months and managed to get to 7th place. Because of this, she had suffered a lot during the reorganization of the African soldiers. But it was also because of this that she was able to participate in this stage. That's it. Now, each of you will get 100 points. The lady who walks through the mirage has distributed the subsidy. You have received 100 race points. You currently have 100 race points. The lady put her glass down on the table. Shall we get started on the 31st floor? Pot. Just as the lady's glass tapped against the table, we were all surrounded by a bright light. A short moment passed. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself above a primeval forest. It's a world where your chosen races live in peace. Look down there. When I looked down, I saw a bunch of small creatures moving around in the forest. Each race lived in their own separate tribe, and they were all at a primitive level.
Oh.
The snails live in swamps. How interesting. The vampires live in caves. We all looked around at the different settlements like people visiting a museum. Was this what an omniscient third-person perspective was like? We could zoom in and out as we pleased. We even went down and wandered among the primitive members of our races, but they never noticed us. Karak. Kirk, Kerr. The Dakibi people grunted and chirped as they butchered a large centipede with a stone knife. When they took off the centipede's legs and roasted them over the fire, I realized that it smelled strangely like chicken. Kerr. The young goblins devoured the centipede meat as though it was the most delicious thing in the world. Centipede chicken? Was the giant centipede this world's chicken? If so, then all of the centipede's legs would taste like chicken legs. Just by catching one centipede, you could get dozens of chicken legs. The goblins look so cute like this. Are you crazy? Well, you were always crazy. Bei Huriong clicked his tongue. But I fell in love with the sight of these little primitive people living together. Krrrrrr. Unfortunately, the times of peace were brief. The towering mountain that stood proudly in the center of the large primeval forest began to shake heavily. It was a volcano. The primitive races might not have been able to see it since they lived under the mountain, but for us, who could see in third person, the lava bubbling within was clearly visible. Oh, no. My companions were a bit apprehensive. Isn't this a bit dangerous? After a short while, this volcano would erupt. For some reason, we were all able to instinctively realize this fact. The lava would rip through the primeval forest in a savage way, and naturally, the primitive races living within it would be annihilated. At this rate, all 7 of the races under our rule would go extinct. I'll now give you your quest for the 31st floor. The lady spoke. This is the Great Forest of Origin, where many races live in harmony. But as you can see, in a short while, the volcano will erupt and destroy everything. Note, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. A holographic window appeared in front of our eyes. You have received the quest for the 31st floor. The text appeared in an instant. Plus. The end of the Golden Era. Difficulty, E. Mission objective, the end of the Golden Era has arrived for every race. A volcano is about to erupt in a land where many races and tribes live in harmony. There is no time. You must lead your race to a suitable safe zone. However, if you fail to do so, your race will go extinct. Plus. Boom. Almost at the same time as when we received the quest, the first explosion sounded. Lava splashed, and the rocks on the mountain shook. It seemed that these huge boulders could roll over and fall at any moment.
Dot.
The Black Dragon Master spoke hurriedly. Wait a minute. They can't see us or hear our voices. How are we supposed to lead them to the safe zone? Communication in itself is impossible. You're right. The lady smiled brightly. Behind her, boom. Rocks flew into the air. They flew through the sky before landing in the forest below. Kier? Keek. Kek. Even the primitive races were able to detect the abnormality. Some races quickly climbed to the tops of trees and looked at the volcano. The volcano continued to shake, and lava was slowly rising from its crater. But you are the guardian constellations of these children. From now on, you will have to take care of them yourself. The 31st floor had been opened. The goblins were panicked and confused. But I gave them a smile they couldn't see. Don't worry. Guys. From now on, I will carry you. Chapter 155. Becoming a God. 1. The volcano painted the world red. Krrrrrrr. Lava poured from the top of the mountain. The river of lava gushed uncontrollably like a carbonated drink that had been shaken as it moved to the thick forest that surrounded the mountain. The green terrain was set ablaze in an instant. Countless races cried out. I'm just your guide. With the disaster as her backdrop, the lady yawned. You all are different. You are the guardian constellations for these children. You are the ones who decided to open the next floor, and you are the ones who chose the races you will take care of in the future. So do your best. Even if you tell us to do our best. We don't know what to do. The Crusader frowned. She kept looking back and forth between the primitive races and the volcano. Her impatience was clearly visible on her face. We have no way to interfere. We can't talk to them. They can't even see us. There's no way for us to make them evacuate. The vice guild leader of our tower's civil militia guild was a kind-hearted person. Even if this was her first time seeing these races, she still wanted to help them. My other companions were the same. In general, they were all feeling impatient. This was because the lava was flowing towards the primeval forest even at that moment. I couldn't bear to see this, so I stepped forward. My lady. Before we started this stage, you gave us race points. And? I doubt you'd give them to us for no reason. You must have given them to us because there was something we could do with them. I spoke calmly. As our guide, please tell us what we can do with our race points. Please be as concise and clear as possible. The lady smiled brightly. Her eyes seemed to be saying, that's the right answer. When they saw her reaction, my companions also looked up. They noticed the validity of my point. Aha! I suppose we can use them to buy items or technology. We'll use our points too. Please tell us what we can do with our points.
Ha!
The lady shrugged slightly. Is this what they meant when they said the stage clearance was different depending on if there was a quick-witted warrior or not? Well, the Death King is right. This is also part of my job as a guide. SRRRK. A notification window appeared in front of our eyes. Welcome to the Civilization Store. The hologram contained a long list of products. Plus. Oracle Message, 20 points. Animal Possession, 40 points. Dream Appearance, 100 points. Prey Search, -5 points. Search for a bronze-ranked settlement, 80 points. Clan rank general, draw, 100 points. Invention of bronze rank technology, draw, 1000 points. Plus. Okay. The real game started now. Up until now, I'd been following a strategy guide using everything the Flame Emperor had gone through in the past. The Flame Emperor occasionally talked about how he cleared a stage during his interviews, and my collection of interviews was nothing short of a strategy guide. I remembered this strategy guide quite vividly. But that doesn't mean I know the strategies in detail. I knew there was a civilization store. However, I didn't know exactly which item to buy to overcome the current difficulties. Now, I had to rely on my own strength and use my own brain to figure it out. How do I make the goblins head to the safe area? Should I buy Oracle Message and try to communicate? I pondered to myself. Suddenly, the Crusader opened her mouth. I have a question. Is an Oracle Message sent directly to the race? It seemed the Crusader was thinking about the same item I was. Maybe we all were. As if she expected this question, the lady nodded lightly. MHM. That's right. How are the messages delivered specifically? It's something you all have experienced before. It's the same way the constellations deliver messages to you. The lady twisted her hair with her fingers. The lady who walks through the mirage gives you an example. A voice rang out in my head. It was a voice message. You've experienced this many times before, haven't you? As I said, you will experience what it's like to be a constellation. Oh, by the way. Oracle Message is a single-use item. Even if you buy one, you can only send it once, so be careful. Only one person will receive your message. If you want to send more, you'll need to buy more. The Crusader nodded. Understood. I'd like to buy an Oracle Message. The lady smiled in an ominous way. Hoo-hoo. And no matter what happens, you won't get a refund. As soon as I saw the lady's smile, I knew something was wrong. But the purchase had already been completed. The Crusader looked down at the race she'd selected, the ocean race. The ocean race was made up of mermaids. The mermaids floundered in the river, unsure of what to do. The lava is flowing from the east, they can't go south. The Crusader muttered to herself. Even in the middle of an emergency, she did her best to stay calm. After identifying the mermaid who seemed to be the leader of the ocean race, she declared the oracle she intended to send. Swim west with all your might. Brr. The mermaid leader leapt out of the water. Cow? Cow? Startled, the mermaid splashed the water's surface with her tail. From her perspective, God's voice had suddenly rung out in her head. Naturally, she'd be surprised. But the mermaid's reaction was strange. Huh? The mermaid didn't swim west. Instead, it simply spun around in one place. Even though she'd used valuable points, the Crusader had been ignored. She stared at the mermaid with a blank expression. Wait, this isn't right. She isn't listening to my oracle. I wonder. The lady pretended to not know anything as she leaned her head against her pillow. You wouldn't say, yes, understood, just because you heard the voice of a constellation, would you? Maybe that's why. What? Maybe it isn't. By the way, there isn't much time left. If you don't do something, your races will all go extinct on the 31st floor, won't they? Then, your tower attack would end here too. Even if her words were cruel, the lady was right. Krrrrrr. By now, the lava had already reached the foot of the mountain. Not only the lava, the boulders that were sent flying by the eruption were all dangerous. If even a single boulder was to land within the tribe, the damage would be severe. Why? Why didn't the oracle work? I rolled the problem around in my head. Did the lady lie to us? No. It was unlikely that the tower guide would intentionally deceive us. She wouldn't tell us the whole truth, but she certainly wouldn't lie. Could it be that the mermaid didn't understand the message? As I pondered, my eyes were drawn to the goblins scurrying below. Kerr. Kirk. Kerk. The goblins howled. All of the primitive races were shocked by the rocks raining down from the sky like meteors. Suddenly, I realized something. Something that was incredibly obvious. There wasn't anything wrong with the oracle. There wasn't anything wrong with the oracle, Crusader. The problem is with them. I turned to look at my companions as I said this. Everyone was looking at me. Among them, the Crusader had her head lowered as if she was contemplating buying another oracle message. What do you mean, Death King? Don't buy any more messages. It's pointless. You'll have to tell us why. Naturally. It must be because their language hasn't been completed yet. The Crusader's eyes widened. What did you say? They are still in a primitive stage. How could they understand if you told them to run west with all their might? Do they even know where west is in the first place? Indeed.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a problem with the translation. That might not be a part of their vocabulary. It was only then when the Crusader understood the loophole. The eyes of my other companions also widened. My point was correct. Compared to these primitive people, our language was much more developed. Even if they wanted to understand it, they couldn't. Oh, my God. Then, the oracle is really useless, isn't it? The Black Dragon Master had a defeated expression on her face. They might understand if we told them, go that way, but we have no way of telling them where that way is. I'm not sure how to get those children to understand us. No. There must be a way. The tower wouldn't deceive them. It would never prepare a stage that was impossible to clear. With that confidence filling me, I looked at the civilization store once again. Plus. Oracle message, 20 points. Animal possession, 40 points. Dream appearance, 100 points. Prey search, -5 points. Search for a bronze-ranked settlement, 80 points. Clan rank general, draw, 100 points. Invention of bronze-rank technology, draw, 1.000 points. Plus. Anne came up with a strategy for how to get the primitive people to the safe area without the use of language. My lady. MHM. Can I look for any animal I want with prey search? For example, if I want a tiger, would it search for the nearest tiger? The lady nodded. MHM. It's possible. There aren't any tigers in this world, but it would search for an animal that is the most similar. However, you cannot directly possess a member of a primitive race. For that, you will need a higher tier item. Okay. A picture was drawn in my head. I would like to buy Search of Prey. Not understanding what I was trying to do, the Black Dragon Master tried to stop me. Death King? Why are you searching for prey in this situation? I will explain in a little while. Time was of the essence. Purchased prey search. 5 points have been deducted. You currently have 95 race points. A bronze card appeared in my hand. After getting the card, I turned to the lady. My lady. Please search for the most uniquely colored, fleet-footed, and large animal in the area. A white deer or a white lion. or even a black horse. It doesn't matter. Dot. The lady's eyes glowed as if she found this interesting. The conditions are a bit vague. But fine, I'll find it for you. You're still beginners. I won't be too strict with you. The lady flicked her fingers as she said this. Then, the card in my hand melted. Your prey search has been consumed. As the card melted, it became light bronze powder. This powder then took the shape of an arrow and moved as though it had a will of its own. When it finally stopped moving, I found that it was pointed towards a large bush, under which lay a large beast. It was a lion with white fur. Fortunately, it was also quite close to the goblin village. I would like to buy another item from the store. I spoke without hesitation. I'd like to buy animal possession. Messages appeared in front of me again. Purchased animal possession. 40 points have been deducted. You currently have 55 race points. In an instant, my precious initial funds had been almost halved. But it didn't matter. I had to save the goblin tribe as soon as possible because the lava could destroy the forest at any moment. When he saw this, the heretic questioner immediately realized what I was doing. I see. Everyone, possess the most conspicuous animal you can find. Following me, the heretic questioner quickly purchased prey search and animal possession. Primitive civilizations worship mystical-looking animals. It's a very basic form of religion. If a white lion or black deer appears at a moment when it seems the world is about to end, they would take it as a sign from God. As I expected, the heretic questioner quickly understood my actions. By possessing a mystical animal, we can directly lead them to the safe area. Even if we don't say anything, they will follow us. You really are incredibly smart, Death King. Truly. Everyone, hurry up. My companions all bought the same items I did. With these companions by my side, I pointed at the white lion and used my animal possession card. I choose to possess that animal. Shaw. My consciousness shook slightly and became dark as if a light had been turned off. Then, when I opened my eyes again, I realized my perspective had changed.
Grrr.
My voice, no, the growls of a beast came out as I opened my mouth. I looked down at my sharp claws that easily sank into the soil beneath me. Beautiful white fur seemed to mask the ferocity of this wild beast. Gore.
Grrr.
Good, just as I planned. I raised my heavy body. The body of a lion was nothing like that of a human. It was really strange to walk on all fours. But as I kept moving forward, I eventually encountered the goblins. Using my aura isn't impossible, but it would be extremely difficult. The blood flow was too different. Thud. Thud. I raced through the forest. I stepped forward with the lion's front paws before following with the back paws. My four-legged movement was still awkward, but the lion's running speed was quite fast. Oh. It was amazing. This is better than I expected. The smell of smoke from the burning wood. The smell of the fresh, blooming flowers. Then, a stench from nearby reached me. This had to be the odor from the goblins. It smelled like soybean paste stew that had gone bad after being left overnight in the sweltering heat of summer. Ugh. This race even smells ugly. Eventually, I arrived at the goblin village. The strong stench made it very easy to find. Kerk. Kirk. The primitive goblins were still wandering around aimlessly. The little goblins clung to their mothers and wailed, and even the older goblins banged their heads on the ground, in a gesture I didn't know the meaning of, or stomped their feet. They were so flustered that they didn't even notice the white lion that was approaching their village. They really are a poor, pitiful race. I stood tall before the entrance of the village. Crew! And roared at the goblins. Kirk? Kerp? Cur? The goblins erupted. Those who had been banging their heads against the ground scrambled to their feet, only to fall on their faces again. The wails of the young goblins became even sharper. Wow! Great job, great! From the goblins' perspectives, the earth suddenly began shaking, fire appeared in the sky, and now, a demonic beast had appeared in their village. They must have felt like the world was coming to an end. Grrr. I waved my tail and stomped on the ground. Then I turned my head. Follow me. Guys. Follow me. Of course, these guys were goblins. They looked like goblins, and they were as smart as goblins. So even if a mysterious animal did appear in front of them, they wouldn't follow it. They just continued to look at me from a distance, scared. In that case, I took out my secret weapon. Grrrrk. A strange sound came from my mouth. It wasn't the growls of a lion, nor was it the words of a human. I used Goblin High Society. The goblins, who had been filled with fear, pricked their ears. Kudash, Kirk? Grrrr. Grrrrk. Care. The goblins looked at each other. Then they began to mutter among themselves. I didn't understand their chattering, but it must have been something like, "What is he saying? I don't know, but it must be something amazing." I stomped my front paw again. Grrrrk. Grgr. Gorgork. Follow me, my children. Quickly. Rustle. Rustle. The goblins began standing up one by one. Good. Good job. That's right. Good job, my children. I snorted. No matter what anyone said, goblins were a race that had managed to become bipedal. So even if they were a little dumb now, it was still possible for them to one day create a brilliant civilization. Gork. Come on, follow me. I made a graceful U-turn before trudging into the forest. The goblins hesitated for a moment before they began to follow me. There was a bit of a scuffle at the beginning to decide who would be in front, but in the end, all of the goblins in the village began to follow me as if they were in a trance. Then, boom! Not long after I led the group out, a huge boulder from the volcano smashed into the village. The explosion was so powerful that the ground shook. Care? Crew? Kerp, Kerk? The goblins all collapsed in shock. Soon after, they all realized that something terrible had happened to their home and that they had only managed to escape the disaster by a hair's breadth. The last settlement of the goblins has been destroyed. You must now lead them to a new settlement. The goblins all stared at me, stunned. There was a hint of cuteness in their dull expressions. Gore. Hoo-hoo. I, who was in the body of the white lion, snorted. Kekerker. You should be grateful. Then, I strutted off while proudly displaying my handsome figure. Kerr. Kudash, Kerker. The atmosphere of the goblin group suddenly changed. The beings who had followed me with fear and wariness before now followed me proudly. Kekerker. The goblins began to chant. Kekerker. 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 What are they saying? I thought I could understand what they were saying, so I was a bit relieved. However, I had no idea what they were saying now. It was at that moment when the tower's voice appeared in my head. The beginning of a religion. The goblins have created a primitive religion. Ha! Your race is the first to develop primitive religion in this world. I blinked. From now on, the goblin race will follow the white lion religion. You are the first to receive this achievement. You have received 500 race points. What the hell is this? I looked back at the goblin group with a strange expression. Kekerker. Kekerker. The goblins continued to shout their strange chant. I was so dumbfounded that I couldn't even snort. Do these guys really think of me as their god? Kim Gongja. That was the moment I became the god of the goblins. Chapter 156. Becoming a god. 2. With my guidance, the goblins were able to safely escape. Kerr. Keru. Kekerker. The goblins all jumped for joy. They looked just like little green chimpanzees. If they were to shout Yukiki instead of Kirk, people might actually mistake them for monkeys. These guys. How cute. You think these things are cute? Huh? Bei Huryong, who appeared behind me, shivered as he said those words. Zombie, something is really wrong with you, huh? Mr. Sword Emperor, look at them objectively. I can already see what the goblins can become in the future. It's such a noble and beautiful sight. I can already see what the future holds even though it's still far away. Ugh. I can't deal with this bastard anymore. I'm so helpless and powerless that I feel like I'll lose my mind every time this bastard opens his mouth. At that time, other races had also succeeded in escaping. The Black Dragon Master had chosen to become an elegant black swan as she guided the vampires. Since I left the forest first, I was able to see them exit. Whoosh! A large group of bats flapped their wings as they flew across the sky, chasing after the black swan in a triangular formation. Oh! That's pretty cool. As the black swan flew by, our eyes met for a moment. Within the swan's dark eyes wasn't the ferocity of a wild beast but the sharp intelligence of the Black Dragon Master. Flap! The swan spread its wings again. Then, the black swan disappeared over the horizon in an instant. It seemed that all my companions had managed to transform into various animals and lead their races to safety. Quest clear. You have successfully evacuated your race from the Great Forest of Origin. You have received 300 race points as a reward for clearing the quest. You currently have 855 race points. The rewards were satisfactory. 500 race points for being the first to create a primitive religion or whatever and 300 points as the quest reward. That's not bad at all. Is that a lot? It's a good start. I don't want to use up all of my points at the start. If you say so. After all, you are the great goblin god, Kim Gongja. Yep. Now, all we need to do is find a new place to live. I mentally chose the next item I wanted to buy from the store. I was still able to use the civilization store even while possessing the white lion. Are you sure you wish to purchase search for a bronze-ranked settlement? I agreed to the purchase without hesitation. Yes. Messages popped up one after the other. Purchased search for a bronze-ranked settlement. 80 points have been deducted. You currently have 775 race points. Whoosh! An image appeared in my mind. Across a river and 3 streams from our location was a settlement suitable for goblins. Appropriate moisture and suitable hunting ground, it's just fine. Good. Now, all I had to do was guide them to it. Gork. Gore, KRR, Gore. Good. Follow me. I gallantly put one of my lion paws forward. Like baby ducklings, the goblins didn't think about anything and simply followed me jollily. 6 days later. We finally arrived at the settlement I saw in the image. Care. The goblins threw themselves into a nearby stream while expressing how much they liked this place. The goblin race likes this place very much. The sorrow of losing their old home within the goblins is beginning to fade. The goblins rolled around in the stream and covered themselves with mud. This appeared to be their hobby. The mothers dug up the sticky mud with their claws before rubbing it on the backs of their children. The little ones all happily shouted, "Kurr! Kurr," as they were covered. Did the mud bath feel that good? Maybe they're trying to get rid of that horrid stench. The goblins reek, don't they? It's a bit better now that they've covered themselves with mud, though. Ho! I guess you could say that. Do you not agree, Great Goblin God, Kim Gongja? God doesn't care about every little thing. Only about the great plans in mind. Psycho. I didn't pay attention to what he was saying. Instead, I simply lay down and watched the little mud festival unfold in front of me. As I watched on happily, I suddenly heard the voice of the tower. Would you like to make this the new settlement of the Goblin tribe? Yep. You have pioneered a new settlement. Please choose a name for the new settlement. A name. I want to call it the Temple of Raviol, but I doubt they'd be able to pronounce that. No, they definitely can't pronounce it. I scratched at the ground with a sullen expression. This sensation of scratching at the ground and the squishy feeling as it gave under my claws was really soothing. Hey! Aren't you acting more and more like a beast? You're just imagining things. Suddenly, a fly began to buzz around me. For clarity's sake, I suppose I should add that the animal I was currently possessing only looked kind of like a lion, but it wasn't actually a lion. I just called it that since it was more convenient. I swung my tail. Tack! And with a soft sound, my tail hit the fly's body accurately. The fly couldn't withstand my strike and fell to the ground, dead. Fly hunts like this one had become my hobby during this task. It was pretty fun. As I thought, you really are becoming more like a beast, aren't you, you bastard? If it means I can have the manly charms of a beast, then I'd gladly accept it. In any case, I'll call this place, Guru. And so I roared. Guru dash! The tower responded to my roar. The name of this settlement has been designated as Guru. The goblin race is no longer at risk of extinction. You can now declare this stage cleared. Would you like to declare this stage as cleared? Wow, you finally cleared it. I can finally get out of this disgusting gork zone. Hey, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and declare the stage clear. What are you talking about? Don't you know the tower well? I know. I just want to get out of this damn place as soon as possible. I'm going to reject it. Race war. From the 31st to the 40th floors, this theme would continue. If the 31st floor was the old Stone Age asterisk, then the 32nd floor might be the new Stone Age star. That was how it worked. Asterisk, also known as the Paleolithic and Neolithic ages. If I were to declare the clear now, on the next floor, I might meet the goblins hundreds or even thousands of years from now. I have to do everything I can before I move on. I calmly looked over the goblin race's status window. This was something I'd done many times since the race selection. The goblins' traits were victims of racial discrimination, tribal consciousness, and greed. I read the information about these traits in turn. Victims of racial discrimination. Rank F. Effect: the goblin race is extremely ugly. So much so that it invokes the hatred of anyone looking at them. As a result, the goblin race suffers from all kinds of prejudices and misunderstandings and has great difficulty forming healthy relationships with other races. Beware! Within the hearts of those discriminated against burn the flames of hatred. The greater the hatred of the goblin race, the more hostile they are to other races. This is a problem that must be solved before it reaches the point of no return. However, this trait can change depending on how history progresses. Plus, this will be a problem. What if I went to the next floor and found that the goblins were already hostile to all the other races? So much so that the goblins would be declared public enemies, just like in a normal fantasy world. That would be horrible. To do so much only to become the public enemy. This one must be resolved before I leave. Next is tribal consciousness. Plus. Tribal consciousness. Rank, C. Effect, the goblin race has a strong sense of kinship. When a goblin dies, no other race in this world will shed as many tears as a goblin. Instead, they would rejoice, cheerfully yelling, "The monster is dead. We did it," as they toasted. Goblins are goblins. It's an inevitable fate. With this thought, there is only one race in the world they can believe in, their own. The most taboo things in goblin society are as follows: betraying another goblin, killing another goblin, etc. Unless there is some kind of misfortune, there is no way the goblin race would attack each other. However, this trait can change depending on how history progresses. Plus, I've seen it several times, and I still think it's a good trait. This showed that even if they were goblins, they still had at least one good trait. I don't think this trait is that good. Huh? Really? Never mind. I was just rambling. Hurry up and look at the next trait. Are you finally starting to see the charm of the goblins? I just want you to get this over with. That wasn't a truthful response. It was obvious that he was beginning to see the cute side of this little race I was raising. I don't. Side by side, a lion and a spirit sat beside each other as they looked at the last trait window. Greed. Rank, B. Effect, the goblin race is filled with greed. Perhaps it is because of their shame for being too ugly. Or maybe the goblin race wants to be recognized for their possessions instead of themselves. Kirk. I just put on warm mud. Kirk. I just covered myself with premium mud from the head of the stream. They desire to be the most distinguished. They long to be even greater. In the hearts of the goblin race, their inferiority complexes, low self-esteem, and desires for greatness combine to create a powerful form of greed. Maybe the goblin race will crave shiny treasures. Or maybe they'll catch slaves and brag about whose slaves are prettier. The goblin race is greedy, and with this greed comes potential. How their greed develops depends on you. However, this trait can change depending on how history progresses. Plus, I fell into deep thought. As expected, they're just like me. Huh? What was that? Nothing. I was just talking to myself. I slowly lifted my heavy lion body. As I slowly approached the stream, the mud-covered goblins noticed and they all began to crowd around me. Kekerker? Goblins had fewer facial muscles compared to humans. This was because their mouths were too large. As a result, it was difficult to recognize their facial expressions. Krrr. I lifted my front paw and smashed it against one of the rocks beside the stream. The goblins shrank back in surprise. But I continued to swing my foot forward without caring about them. It wasn't long after that all my claws were broken. Hey! What are you doing? Wait! I pressed down into the mud with my wounded foot. Like a brush, my fur soaked up the mud like ink. The goblins continued to watch my actions with clear confusion. KRRNG. I walked towards the goblin closest to me. The little goblin flinched as my giant shadow covered it, but it didn't run away or hide. Gore. KRRNG, KRR, Gork. That's right. Good boy. Stay there. It won't be long. PUK. I gently rubbed my paw along the little goblin's stomach. As if cleaning a window, I drew curves with my paw. Every time I put mud on it, the little goblin flinched, but it still didn't run.
Uh,
Bei Huriong muttered. By chance, are you trying to draw a tattoo? That was right.
yeah,
I drew a swirl pattern on the goblin's stomach with my paw. It wasn't just this one. After I finished my swirl pattern, I began to draw other things on the other goblins as well. Gore. Because I drew it with a lion's paw instead of my human hands, it was a bit clumsy and ugly. It was also very messy since I painted it with mud instead of any conventional paints. But if I had been able to use paint, it definitely would have looked better. After a while, all of the goblins had tattoos. Kerr? Kerr? The goblins looked at themselves and at each other as if they were amazed. After a while, like children who had been given a new toy, they began to rub mud on each other. Kirk. Kerp, Kirker. Kirker. The goblins splashed around happily in the stream. And when their patterns washed off, they could simply draw new ones. Seeing that, the goblins became joyful again. The goblin race has awakened its sense of beauty. The goblin race is mesmerized by the beauty of their bodies. The tower's voice echoed in my head. The goblin race trait, victims of racial discrimination, has changed. The goblin race has gained a new trait, primitive fashionista. Windows appeared before me one after the other. Plus. Primitive fashionista. Rank E. Effect, the goblin race is extremely ugly. So much so that it invokes the hatred of anyone looking at them. As a result, the goblin race suffers from all kinds of prejudices and misunderstandings, and has great difficulty forming healthy relationships with other races. Kirk. We are ugly. In response to this, the goblin race created a special culture. Then why don't we wear nice things? That was to cover their appearances with something fashionable. The goblin race began to draw various tattoos on their green skin. The more beautiful the tattoo, the more fashionable the goblin is in the eyes of the goblin race. Congratulations! The goblin race now has a culture called fashion. Long live the primitive fashionistas! No matter how you decorate it, a goblin is still a goblin. Of course, whether this fashion is recognized by other races or not is a different matter entirely. However, this trait can change depending on how history progresses. Plus. Okay. The mouth on my lion face spread into a satisfied smile. KRRR. It didn't matter if this was a race war or a chance to experience being a guardian constellation. To put it simply, I just had to raise these kids to the best of my ability. KRRNG, KRRR, Gorp, GRRNG. Hey, I'm going to make your race soar to the heavens. I let out a powerful roar. Kekerker. 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 Goblins covered in mud danced all around me. I was touched. After witnessing this scene, Bei Huriong muttered softly. No. I think they're all crazy. Don't tell me they're all going to be little Kim Gongjas. An entire race wouldn't become crazy like Kim Gongja, would they?
Yeah.
That's impossible. Absolutely not. Such a hellish fantasy could never turn into reality. Care. The majestic cry of the goblins echoed throughout the settlement. Chapter 156. Becoming a God. 3. Purchased prey search. 5 points have been deducted. You currently have 865 race points. KRRRR. I bit into the bull's skin. It was an animal with spines sticking out of it like a hedgehog, and it didn't look like a cow at all, but there was a reason why I called it a cow. Moo. And that was the sound it made. Moo. Moo. The bull let out a soft cry. It struggled and resisted as much as it could, but in the end, it was useless. Even this strange bull creature could not withstand my teeth and claws, not to mention the sharp spears of my goblins. Kirk. Coo. Kirk, Kekago, Gork. Hunt successful. You have gained complete knowledge of this prey. Hunting this animal will no longer give any race points. Hunting experience maxed. Hunting no longer gives any race points. Well, then. That's it for hunting. Zombie. Let's get out of here already. Please. It's like you forgot everything else. Good. Now, it's time to gather. Damn it. And many peaceful days passed just like that. Gathering no longer gives any race points. Now, the goblin's bare skin was no longer visible. Instead, the goblins used red and green mud to paint their clumsy but eye-catching tattoos. And somehow, the bad smell went away. I wasn't sure if the mud had some kind of deodorizing effect or if it was the power of primitive fashionista, but the soybean paste-like smell that had been brought by the summer heat had all but vanished. That wasn't all. The goblin race has distinguished themselves as hunter-gatherers. The fear of large animals in the goblin race is slowly fading. You have received 50 race points. You currently have 1015 race points. Gore. Okay. I wagged my tail in satisfaction. Now, I've done almost all I can for them. The goblins started out playing with mud, and now, they were able to hunt large animals. But this was just the beginning. The soil upon which the great goblin civilization would flourish had been tilled. I can't get any more race points. Were my other companions in similar situations? Venomous snake who guides the noble race declares clear. Sword saint who guides the pure race declares clear. The number of people declaring stage clear gradually increased. Viper was the first to declare it. The sword saint came second. And I was sure that the rest were also wrapping up this stage as well. I clicked my tongue in disappointment. If possible, I'd like to pass on text or aura or something like that to them. This is really... What's stopping you from passing it on to them? I can't do it even if I want to. I sighed with my lion's mouth before looking at the civilization store. The civilization store had most of the items we'd need, and what I wanted to pass on to the goblins was clearly marked. Item search. Text. A holographic image appeared in front of me, displaying the item. The problem was obvious. Text. Description: your race develops characters. Keeping records in writing is much more effective than word of mouth. Unlike a voice, which disappears as soon as you stop speaking, text can weather the passage of time. Price: 4,500 race points. The pure race starts with this skill. Plus. Damn it. What a crazy price. It was too damn expensive. I currently have 1,015 points. I spent a lot of points hunting and doing other things, but even if I saved everything I earned, I still wouldn't be able to afford text. And yet, the pure race were able to start with such an expensive item. Was there any racial balancing? It's your fault for choosing goblins. Kakik. It wasn't just the pure race who had bonuses. In fact, even the pure race wasn't much. The Count's fairy race, or elves, had mana reaction and aura reaction from the start. Both were skills that cost 6,200 points. I once again felt just how bad the goblins' start was. Even though I'm sure these little guys will ascend to the heavens in the future and gobble up both the pure race and fairy race, I still feel sorry for them. Shouldn't you feel sorry for yourself instead, zombie? I'm not sure about anything else, but I at least want to pass on text. Is there really no way to acquire 4,500 points? The voice of the tower sounded again. Crusader who guides the ocean race declares clear. Even the Crusader declared clear. Now, there were only 3 people left on the 31st floor. The heretic questioner who ruled the snail race. The black dragon master who ruled over the vampire race. And me. I decided to stop thinking about it. That's it. I just need to stop trying to get text through conventional methods. Even if I did manage to save up 4,500 points, it would be a waste to spend them like that. I can't imagine pouring all of my precious points into a single item. And since when did I start using conventional methods? I've also resorted to trickery. What are you talking about? I just need to teach them the characters myself. From that day, I began to battle with the goblins' brains. KRRRK, gore. Cur. Guys, look at this. This is A. I drew the letter A on the ground. I made a large carving with my claw in case they couldn't recognize it. But the goblins sitting around me just tilted their heads. Care? Kekerker? Right. That was a dumb idea. But I am not a man who gives up easily. Gore. Ga. Cur. Look carefully. This is A. I growled and nudged at the goblins. The goblins flinched in surprise before shrugging their shoulders. Gar. Go. The goblins then got up and walked into the distance. The goblins are afraid of you. The goblins are confused by your strange behavior. After a while, the goblins returned with meat from a bull they had hunted earlier. The burnt meat was then placed in front of me like an offering. Kekerker. Then, the goblins prostrated on the ground and wept. The goblins beg for your forgiveness. No. Are they serious? Did they think I was mad because I really wanted to eat bull meat? Why couldn't they understand when I was doing my best to tell them? If they kept playing around, the elves nearby would turn them into steamed monster. Did they want to get steamed? Did they want to become an XP farm for the elves in the future? KRRRNG. Ga. Cur. Ku. Kerk. I didn't give up, and I kept trying to teach them characters. But it only resulted in catastrophic failure. The goblins couldn't even memorize the ABCs. I think they managed to memorize a somehow. It seemed like they were looking at me with expressions that said, "What the hell is this? I don't know, and I don't know why we're doing this." I had finally experienced hardship for the first time while leading the goblins. Is it not possible for the goblins to learn characters with their intelligence? As far as I know, when the Flame Emperor went to the 33rd floor with the elves, the goblins also had written language. Is there a problem with their intelligence because this is a bit early? That shouldn't be. I contemplated in silence. Even if I manage to teach them the ABCs like this, they will still forget it eventually. The goblins had to feel it for themselves. Why it was beneficial for them to learn this. And what advantages it had for them. If they didn't, they would forget it in 1 generation or sooner. I wondered how I could give the characters meaning. Wait a minute. I had an idea. What if I was too focused on stereotypes? Right. Just because I wanted to teach them text didn't mean they had to learn the ABCs. I leaped to my feet and roared. KRRRK. Gather round. The goblins, who were eating meat, all gathered in a panicked fashion. Their ears flopped like puppies being scolded. If I could interpret their expressions, I'd probably find something weird. Things like,
Ugh.
I don't like this, or I'd rather just put on mud like usual. In short, they were sulking. KRKR, KRRK. Kekrker, gore, coo. Hey, it's all right. You know I like you guys, don't you? I put some mud on my front paws before rubbing it on the goblins. Then, the goblins, who had lowered their heads with sullen expressions, finally opened their mouths again, smiling. Gogork. Kerp, cur. These punks. Making them happy was as easy as making them upset. My dazzling muddying skills quickly warmed the hearts of all of the goblins. Finally, after calming them down, I showed the text to the goblins. Hey! Look, you guys. This is mud. But this time, the character was different from what I'd shown them before. I drew something on the ground with my claw. First I drew a square before filling it in. Then I picked up a clump of mud and put it beside the mud. This is mud. Understand? Kerk. The goblins had puzzled expressions on their faces. Their faces showed that they didn't understand what I was doing. I decided to take it one step at a time. Days passed one after the other. Every time I put mud in front of the goblins, I drew on the ground beside it. That wasn't all. I also drew characters whenever I put mud tattoos on their bodies. This is day. The sky is bright. Oh. This is night. When the sky is dark. This is the sun. It's blinding. This is the moon. This is water. Water. The stream. What if the water is a little deeper? What if the water is incredibly deep? Cur. Kirk. Cur, coo? Although they were puzzled at first, the goblins slowly began to understand my drawings. The goblins couldn't accept or understand why meant. But they managed to understand that meant mud. Right. It was my approach that was wrong. The goblins' world is still very small. There was very little in this world that the goblins understood or recognized. The world was vast, but the goblins had only seen, smelled, heard, and felt a handful of things. Kirk. Sky. Kerk. Ground. Cur. Meat. Coo. Water. The goblins saw something bright and blue over their heads. Under their feet, they felt something hard, though it was sometimes soft. As the centipede cooked, they smelled something pleasant. The soothing trickle always greeted them when they went to drink at the stream, or the loud splash and nice feeling as they jumped in. Gore. If they liked it, they said they liked it. Kerk. And if they didn't like it, they said they didn't. And so, there were about 6 things in the goblin world. This meant that 6 words were enough to describe their world. 6 pictures rather than dozens of characters. Those were the characters the goblins needed for now. Shaw. One day, it rained. The goblins ran around, washing themselves in the rain. I showed them some characters. Water. Dark sky. Water falling from the dark sky. Rain. I raised my head and pointed at the rainwater drenching the world. Following my lead, the goblins also looked at the rain. Rain. After a short while, the goblins opened their mouths. Kirka? Kirka. Kirka. The goblins pointed towards the rain. Then, they imitated that I drew on the ground. Kirka. Rain. The goblins looked at me as if to ask if they were right. I nodded my head in satisfaction. Gore. Good. Suddenly, the goblin race has developed text. The goblin race has gained the new talent legacy of records. A window appeared in front of me. Plus. Legacy of records. Rank EA. Effect, the goblin race realizes the endless possibilities of drawing. Although their drawings aren't the prettiest, they can still express things in the world. The goblin race knows that these patterns have meanings. Oh. For the goblin race, this means the sky. For the goblin race, this means mud and the ground. Oh. This means the sky and the ground, and the goblin race has taken this to represent the world. Oh. For the goblin race, this means the world. From now on, the goblin race will develop new pictograms. The goblin race will leave records of the things they love, and their text will contain their stories. Best of luck to them. However, this characteristic can change depending on how history progresses. Plus. This was surprising. I only taught them a few drawings, but I managed to avoid spending race points. Kirka, Kirka. Kirkerk. The goblins then left me alone and excitedly began to draw symbols. Watching them, I felt strangely sad, happy, and lonely all at the same time. It was quite the indescribable feeling. Black Dragon Master who guides the blood-sucking race declares clear. A few days later, even the Black Dragon Master declared clear. Now, there were only 2 of us left on the 31st floor. Me and the heretic questioner. I bet the heretic questioner is teaching them something. In the meantime, I taught the goblins numbers. At first, I tried to teach them Arabic numerals, but they couldn't understand them, so I settled for Roman numerals instead. 2, 3 because they were made of simple lines, even the goblins could understand Roman numerals. If I could, I would have liked to teach them some basic arithmetic as well. These guys don't understand the concept of subtraction yet. Goblins were goblins. They couldn't understand that a number greater than 6 existed. But I couldn't expect so much from them so soon. I taught them everything I could. Right? I think so. Hey. I nodded. It's time to leave now. That night, I left the goblin village as they slept. The goblins would probably be very sad when they found out I was gone. But I couldn't just leave the white lion's body in the village as I left the 31st floor. After all, it might attack the goblins and hurt them. Gore.
Goodbye.
Little guys. I licked the forehead of a young goblin with my tongue. Gore. The little goblin continued sleeping without even noticing. Cute thing. I headed as far away from the village as possible. Time slowly passed. In the dark night where there was nothing to keep me company but the sound of bugs, I soon heard the sad cries of goblins in the distance. Kekerk, Kerr. Did they already notice that I'd left? The goblins continued to cry out Kekerker, my name. But I disappeared into the darkness without looking back. Live well. Get big and strong. I'll see you all later. I whispered those words in my heart. I declare, stage clear. The tower's voice responded. Stage clear. The 31st floor stage has been cleared. Compensation will be settled after entering the 32nd floor. Chain layers in progress, you will be sent directly to the 32nd floor. Whoosh! A bright light filled my eyes. Chapter 158. The Great Snail Empire. 1. Immediately after clearing the stage, I was forcibly dragged to the 32nd floor where I found my fellow hunters together with the lady who walks through the mirage. Seated among them, the lady hugged a strange-looking pillow. No. Is that? Upon closer inspection, I realized that it wasn't a pillow but a snail plushie. I couldn't believe it. Since there was a snail plushie, I wondered if there were goblin plushies as well. I have a goblin plushie too. Huh? Here. The lady pulled a goblin plushie seemingly out of nowhere. The plushie had long ears, a fat nose, and prominent cheekbones. Where did you get this? I made it. Can you show it too? Just as I was about to make a completely legitimate request as the goblin god, someone interrupted me. What are you doing? The Black Dragon Master looked at me with an exasperated expression. If you have the time to mess around with the constellation, then we should move on to the next stage. It took us 24 days just to clear the 31st floor. No, is it my sense of time that has become weird? After all, it took years to clear the 10th floor. Maybe. Can you really say that while holding that in your hands? This is just for research. The Black Dragon Master quickly hid the miniature bat plushie behind her back. The Count and the Crusader also fiddled with an elf and a mermaid plushie respectively. I'm just inspecting this item. Isn't it rare to find something that was made directly by a constellation? The item description is pretty interesting. These humans. Death King, here. Thank you. I took the goblin plushie and held it tightly in my arms as I glanced around. We were in a completely white space. It was as though it was white drawing paper that stretched endlessly. And we were standing in the center of it. Is this the 32nd floor? I asked this even though I didn't think it was. And as I expected, the lady shook her head while she hugged the snail plushie. It would be better to think of this place as a waiting room of sorts. In order to initiate the 32nd floor, all of you must first declare stage clear. In the case of Venomous Snake, he has already been waiting here for 15 days. I thought I would die of boredom. The Venomous Snake, who was sitting on the ground, grimaced. Why did you all take so long? I took care of my little guys and then left as quickly as I could. I couldn't even watch what you guys were doing, so I had to meditate all day. With the sprite plushie. It helps with meditation. I used the most practical and pragmatic strategy one could think of, but what about you guys? I didn't expect you to be so immersed in it. It's like... No. You were too insensitive. The Crusader sighed. The lady said it when we first entered the 31st floor. From the 31st to the 40th floor, it will be a race war. In other words, there was always the possibility that the 31st to 40th floors would be connected. We might have to continue ruling over the races we picked on the 31st floor. If it's just clearing the 31st floor, then you'd be right, Chinmumun Guild leader. But if we have to rule all the way up to the 40th floor, it's an entirely different story altogether. Even if we are absent, we would still have to prepare for their development in advance. The Venomous Snake paled slightly. Wait. Where did you hear that? It's obvious to anyone who paid attention. The Crusader sighed heavily. Just think about it, Liao Fan. You have a tendency to not pay attention to things not related to martial arts. Seriously? Is that why you all stayed on the 31st floor for that long? The venomous snake looked around with desperate eyes, hoping that someone would deny it. Unfortunately, there were no hunters there who would care about his wishes. Don't worry about it, venomous snake. Trying to comfort him, I patted his shoulder and smiled kindly. Death King, is it true? The Crusader must have made a mistake, right? I can't be the only one who didn't realize. Even if your tribe is destroyed, we'll still have 6 left. Damn it. The venomous snake buried his face in his hands. The lady had a playful smile as she watched our little play. You don't have to worry too much. All 7 tribes will survive until the next era. In other words, they will all reach the 32nd floor. Thanks to all of your hard work, the prehistoric era ended quite quickly. And now, it'll be the ancient era. Ancient. From the 31st to the 32nd floors, there was a gap in eras. At least 1,000 years will have passed. Thousands of years. I was a bit worried about the goblins, but I was glad that the lady announced that they were still alive. But the lady then made a completely unexpected remark. Now then. Since everyone is here, I'll open up the next stage. The snail plushie the lady was holding rose into the air, and she crawled onto it. Then, like a cavalryman on horseback, she raised her arm and let out a cry. The setting of the 32nd floor is 200 years after the 31st floors. My companions all stared at her silently. My reaction was no different. Huh? The lady had just said 200 years, not 2000. In other words, this meant that the prehistoric era ended in 200 years and the ancient era began after. 200 years? My lady, did you perhaps mean 2,000 years? I had a puzzled expression on my face. It was unbelievable. In the past, even when the Flame Emperor used all of the points to raise the elves, the gap between the 31st and 32nd floors was more than 1,000 years. And even if my memory was inaccurate, it wouldn't have been less than 500 years. But 200 years? Did we really raise those kids that well? You heard correctly. The lady smiled gently. I was also surprised. I knew you would be fast, but I didn't think it would be this fast. No. In this case, I suppose I should say it was slow, not fast. Huh. It seems that sometimes, taking the long way can also be considered a shortcut. What do you mean? You'll find out when you get to the 32nd floor. The lady placed the goblin plushie on the white ground. Then, she spread her arms wide. TL, didn't she give the goblin to Gongja? I'll now open up the 2nd floor. Wait a minute. The Black Dragon Master spoke up. She was also shocked by the fact that only 200 years had passed. Not all of us have arrived yet. The heretic questioner isn't here. The Black Dragon Master was right. There were only 6 of us in the waiting room at the moment. One of our group members, the heretic questioner, hadn't shown up yet. We'll only be able to go to the 32nd floor after he declares clear. You don't have to worry about that. It's fine. The lady waved her hand nonchalantly. Like I said before, everyone who should be here is here. If it's the 4th ranked, heretic questioner you're worried about, he was the first one to reach the 32nd floor and is waiting for you. What? Like I said. The lady smiled brightly. You'll find out when you get there. Pot. A bright light enveloped us. 2. When we opened our eyes, we found ourselves floating in the air. The world unfolded beneath our feet. Last time, what we saw was a large forest. This time, however, it was different. There was no forest, no streams, and no sunlight shining through the leaves. There wasn't even a sky. Oh, my God. The Black Dragon Master muttered in shock. What is this place? The world beneath our feet. The scene that the Black Dragon Master referred to as this place was an underground city. A city that we'd never heard of or seen before. It's hard because the way home is so far, rhyme. A shrill but easily understood voice suddenly echoed. I heard there's a new tavern near the Great Cavity. I wish I could postpone my compulsory service this year, rhyme. Small beings crawled through the city. That's right. They didn't walk, they crawled. They were snails. These translucent creatures slithered about, with large snail shells on their backs. What the hell? This underground city. No, this underground world was very different from the cities we were used to. This was natural. After all, when the snails reached the end of the roads they were crawling on, they could simply begin to clamber up the walls. Don't crawl up the walls randomly, rhyme. Don't be ridiculous. Every wall is a good road for us to use, rhyme. God decides where we have to go, but I can decide how I get there, rhyme. The snails moved freely and comfortably from left to right, top to bottom. It was an enormous underground world. There were numerous large buildings that seemed to be over 20 stories high, but none of them seemed to have stairs. The snails simply climbed up the walls and slipped into the windows. Monthly rent has gone up too much these past few days, rhyme. It's a pity, but I think I'll have to stay in my old shell this winter. There were even some without shells. These shell-less snails huddled together in small caves where they nested. They also transported bright blue gems back and forth. Whenever a snail swallowed these gems, their translucent body glowed blue. It was as though their bodies had actually become blue. Rhyme. I endured a lot for this bite today, rhyme. From how bright they are, it seems that those bastards saved us some good stuff this time, rhyme. We got lucky. Nowadays, traders have no ethics or morals. How can they even play tricks with stone cigarettes? That's not something normal people would do. Rhyme. Let me have a taste too. It didn't end there. Quickly move the cargo, rhyme. A snail swung its tentacle. Pack. And a fleshy sound rang out. The being that was hit with the tentacle groaned as it put heavy stones onto a wagon. The noble race. The beings who venomous snake ruled over. Seriously, the noble race is so lazy. Rhyme. The snail, who seemed to be a supervisor, grumbled. Even though we paid so much for them, the second we take our eyes off them, they try to do something. We saved them, fed them, clothed them, and let them sleep. I don't know why they're still so ungrateful. Right. It's only because slaves can climb a bit better and are strong. Otherwise, there wouldn't be anything good about this shell-less race. Hey, slave. Say rhyme once, rhyme. If you can pronounce it properly, I'll let you go. The snails were much smaller than the noble race. The noble race had bodies the size of orcs with a single horn in the middle of their foreheads. Nevertheless, they seemed afraid of these snails who only reached their waists. 1. Re-me. See that? The slave can't even say rhyme properly, rhyme. They are of such low birth that they can't even say the sacred word. Useless things. Just move the stones. Woo. Oh, my God. Had the snails enslaved the sprites? No. What the hell is this? Venomous Snake's mouth fell open. All of a sudden, his race had become slaves. This doesn't make any sense. I did what I could before I left the 31st floor. I taught them how to make swords and spears, and I taught them how to fight. So what is this? Why did my race become slaves? Era. It was at this moment that we heard a familiar voice. I can finally see the faces I missed. It was the heretic questioner. Ahaha. So it finally recognized that we entered a new era. It's slow when it wants to be slow and fast when it wants to be fast. No. If I were to look at it from an objective standpoint, I suppose it recognized it quite quickly. The heretic questioner was the same as usual. He was wearing the same black priestly robes and had the usual smile on his face. That's why Venomous Snake didn't feel anything strange when he rushed to the heretic questioner. Hey! You psychopath bastard!
Yeah.
How did this happen? Why did my race become your race's slaves? The venomous snake grabbed the heretic questioner's collar and shook it violently. Nevertheless, the heretic questioner's smile remained the same despite the shaking. I'll do my best to explain it briefly. The current snail civilization I created needed a large workforce. Slavery is a pretty useful system for the provision of a labor force. It just so happened that the noble race invaded 112 years ago, and the snails defeated and captured them. What are you? Not to worry. They were hard to tame because they are such a proud race, and while it's still hard, we have at least managed to lower their spirits to some extent. Maybe in another 3 generations, we will be able to change the nature of the race. The venomous snake's mouth fell open. It seemed that he was unable to keep up with what the heretic questioner was saying. On the other hand, the other hunters, who were beginning to have an idea of what was going on, stared at each other in silence. Mr. Heretic Questioner. I opened my mouth, deciding to take the lead. There's something I'd like to ask you. Death King. Yes. You can ask me anything. The heretic questioner smiled. If he had a tail, it probably would have started wagging at that moment. His smile was just as bright as always. We all went to the waiting room after clearing the 31st floor, but you didn't go there. The lady also said that you were the first person to enter the 32nd floor. What does that mean? I see. The heretic questioner tilted his head back and forth a few times before nodding. Strictly speaking, that expression isn't exactly correct. I didn't arrive on the 32nd floor first. Instead, I never left the 31st floor. Silence. It's just as I said, Death King. I know that you all declared stage clears one by one. The tower told me. However, I had a thought. If the 31st floor is connected to the next floor, was it necessary to declare a stage clear? I know a bit about how human history developed. And I believe that this knowledge would certainly be of great help to my snail civilization's development. Therefore, I told the tower that I wouldn't declare a stage clear. Then. Yes. I stayed with the snail race and continued to take care of them. The heretic questioner smiled. Welcome back, everyone. Aha. It's been 200 years, 6 months, and 21 days since we met. It's nice to see you all after such a long time. This Psycho. Chapter 159. The Great Snail Empire. 2. In the beginning, there was Rhyme. No one was sure where Rhyme came from, or where he would go in the future. But Rhyme had chosen them to be the chief among all the races in the world, and he had given them proof that they were the chosen. Although there are many races in this world, you are the only ones who can say the word Rhyme. So you are the only ones I will allow to say my holy name. This is your right. Take rhyme as evidence that you are the chosen, and in everything you do, be it poop, sleep, eat, or dress, recite it to prove my existence. What the hell is this bullsh *t? The heretic questioner smiled at my question. It is a holy covenant I made. A holy covenant? Yes. The vocal organs of the snail race are unique. Of the 7 races, only the snail race can say rhyme. That's why I chose that pronunciation to be the name of God. With a soft sound, the heretic questioner landed lightly in the underground city. My companions and I followed him. Smiling, the heretic questioner began to explain the history of the snail civilization. Neither the elves nor the sprites can say the word rhyme properly. This is simply because their vocal organs are different, but I gave it a different meaning. The snails continued to crawl around, and even passed through our bodies like we weren't there. The snail race says that the fact that they can say rhyme means that they are the ones chosen by God. Why? The crusader opened her mouth. Why did you do this, heretic questioner? You should understand the fear of religion better than anyone else. If you were to misuse the name of God, you wouldn't be able to undo *. I'm not misusing it. Instead, I used it with great care and purpose. My usage is very different from misuse, and even further from abuse. The heretic questioner chuckled. Everyone. Religion was bound to happen anyway. People will always try to search for a cause. They will try to find out a reason for their existence, and the existence of the world. God. That word is so magical that it can be used as the ultimate reason for everything. The heretic questioner pointed towards a pillar. It was a giant pillar. Erected in the center of the underground city. It reached from the ceiling at the very top of the cavern down to the ground. And it was filled with murals similar to the ones from ancient Egypt. The covenant that he'd recited earlier was also written on this pillar. However, Crusader, I know what you want to say. But there are still many things that the people in this era don't know. They don't know why it rains, they don't know why their hearts beat, and they don't know why they need to drink water to survive. A smile spread across the heretic questioner's lips. Think about that fear. Fear. Yes. Fear. The heretic questioner said. Their hearts beat in their chests. They can hear the beating. But they don't know why it's beating. If they get hurt, they bleed, and if they lose too much blood, they die. But they don't even know why their blood flows. They don't know why bread is delicious, why eating when they're hungry makes them happy, or why they need salt. The heretic questioner put his hands together as if he was praying. For them, the world is filled with unknown monsters. No. There are even monsters in their bodies. They don't know anything, but they can only live the lives they were given. To be totally ignorant and powerless about their own lives. Can you understand their fear? Clang! The sound of stone being mined came from the distance. On the other side of the cave, miners dug up rock salt. God dispels their ignorance and powerlessness. Rain is no longer an unknown monster. It is God's tears. The world sometimes sheds tears. Clang! 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 Snail miners leaked mucus as they mined the rock salt. Then they grabbed the sharp stone shards with their tentacles and threw them behind them. Salt is no longer an unknown rock. When the mother goddess died, her hair became the forest, her blood became the ocean, and her teeth became salt. Salt comes from the body of God. Therefore, it is sacred and safe to eat. There are even hygiene certificates for each food item. The heretic questioner looked reverent with his hands clasped together. He then continued in a soft voice, like a never-ending stream. And God said unto them, You were born because of me. I care about you, and therefore, you should become beings who care about God. Do you understand? It is only because of God that these little ones were able to find any meaning in life. Everyone. Think about it. The heretic questioner smiled brightly. Now, they know the beating of their hearts isn't the sound of some unknown monster. God made them in His own image. Therefore, this beat is a melody created by God, and every time they hear it, they are hearing God's music. The heretic questioner let out a soft sigh. Isn't it beautiful? The heretic questioner turned to look at the underground city again. The world he created. Looking at how far the snail civilization had come, this little god felt pleased. Now, they are free to be what they want to be. They have finally escaped their fate as insignificant beings. Their lives finally have direction. We did not come to this world for no reason. We are loved by God. They constantly build temples. They build large, majestic structures to show their reverence, and to show that they are loved by God and that they love God. Isn't that amazing? Everyone. The people of this era are truly in love with the world. All love should be proven. It requires effort. Instead of drowning in their fear, they struggle to gain the love of God. Even if this love might be their own misunderstanding, sometimes, people need misunderstandings in order to live. Bless their souls. The heretic questioner ended his prayer and spread his arms. You should regard religion as a necessary evil. And a necessary evil is born from necessity. They need to have a God. Because with God, they can breathe, live and love. That was the creed and divine will of the heretic questioner. People need a reason to love a flower, even if it's only to shed tears on it. God grants them infinite reasons. Believing in ancient gods didn't hurt humanity. Instead, it was only through God that people understood themselves and loved the world. For a while, there was only silence. The sound of rock salt being mined rang out in the distance, clang, clang, clang. I slowly turned my head and looked at the underground city. Slaves. Hurry up. Rhyme. Your break is over. Rhyme. Load it up and take it to the pier. Snails clung to the stone walls and swung their tentacles. Pock. The knees of the slaves carrying their loads buckled slightly. Perhaps they had already become accustomed to flogging, as the slaves simply groaned and continued walking. 1, 2. 1, 2. Among them was the race venomous snake ruled over. The sprites who had a single horn sticking from their foreheads. The noble race was used to carry heavy loads. Swick, swick, swee. The ocean race, ruled by the crusader, swam in the river that flowed outside the cavern. The mermaids tied ropes around their upper bodies and pulled boats along behind them. Pier. Ba. Pier. The blood-sucking race ruled by the black dragon master flew around the cavern non-stop. Every bat had letters, scrolls or other items clasped in their hind feet. From west to east, the bats delivered items to the residents living in the city. Noticing my gaze, the heretic questioner smiled. This is Remepolis, the capital of the snail civilization. Its special product is rock salt. According to the religious texts, this is where the mother goddess laid her head to rest when she died. The snail race believed that this cave is the mother goddess' skull, and that the rock salt is the teeth of the mother goddess. Supplying these holy teeth to the rest of the empire is the main industry for Remepolis, and the control of the salt trade is how the snail race maintains its power. That's amazing. That's really amazing, but has it really been 200 years? The black dragon master frowned slightly. It doesn't make sense. How did you survive for 200 years?
Now
that we're doing this quest, aren't we using a type of spirit body? 200 years or so is no problem. No, it's not. It's 200 years. Yes. In that time, I kept possessing the white dog. When one dog died, I would simply possess its descendant. I didn't mean. With a tired expression on her face, the black dragon master didn't bother to finish her sentence. My other companions also had similar expressions. The heretic questioner smiled and said, "Because of that, the dogs from the bloodline I possessed are regarded as divine beasts. They stay in the imperial palace and temple. The 34th divine beast died today and I was about to possess the 35th. But coincidentally, you guys came back. So once again, welcome back." My companions shut their mouths. Behind the heretic questioner was the pillar, and behind the pillar was a large sphinx-like statue. There was only one way to describe the statue. A giant Welsh corgi. It was easy to guess which dog the heretic questioner possessed. Then, Kerk. I heard an all too familiar cry. Kirk. I dedicate today's glory to our sacred white lion. Kerr. I offer my blood to the citizens of the great Remepolis. Gork. Thud. Two goblins, each holding a sword, pounded on their shields. They were standing on a flat mound of mud. Countless snails surrounding the mound cheered loudly. Rhyme. I bet my entire fortune on you, dirty mold. Kirk. Today is the day. Kill him.
Oh.
Hearing the cheers of the crowd, the goblins roared.
Go.
Then, they charged towards each other. Mud splattered. Wielding their short swords, the goblins slashed at each other's shields. Clang! The harsh sound of iron colliding filled the air.
Oh.
Barbarians without shells. Swing your forelegs. Rhyme. Hit him with your forelegs. What are you doing? Move your feet, you dumb bastard. Rhyme. I was speechless. Gladiators? They're gladiators? Yes. The heretic questioner's smile was in full bloom. They are sword fighters. The goblins howled as they swung their swords. From the parts of their skin not covered by their shields, red geometric tattoos were visible. The goblins are known for their courage and cleverness. They are the most favored sword fighters in Remepolis, no, in the entire Slime Empire. A goblin screamed as it was cut. But its opponent didn't miss the chance. In an instant, he spun his sword around and stabbed it into the other goblin's neck. Blood spurted out. The audience cheered.
Go.
Suddenly. You have been given a quest for the 32nd floor. Words appeared in front of my eyes. Plus. The Great Snail Empire, Goblin Race. Difficulty, B+. Objective, tribal unification is imminent. The main characters of this unification are the snails. With highly developed government systems and religious organizations, they have subjugated one race after another and made them slaves. If left alone, all races will kneel beneath their mucus. Rescue the goblin race from the oppression of the snail race. However, if you fail, the snail race will win and clear the 32nd floor. Plus. A great escape. That was the mission of this stage. Chapter 160. The Great Snail Empire. 3. The others, like the venomous snake and the black dragon master, all began to frown slightly one after the other. They must have received a quest as well. It wasn't too difficult to guess the contents. I bet it's about helping the races they are in charge of escape. It was around this time that Heretic Questioner also smiled. Ho! He'd probably received a quest as well. It wasn't too difficult to guess what that was about either. I just received a mission. It is to protect my empire by preventing your races from breaking free. The exact opposite of ours. Defend the empire. You were probably tasked with rescuing your respective races from the slime empire. How interesting. Our quest objectives conflict with each other. A strange silence fell upon the group.
Woo!
Woo! For a while, the screams from the Colosseum beneath us were the only things we could hear. The Heretic Questioner rubbed his chin. I got it. Everyone. Please give in to me. What? The Black Dragon Master furrowed her brows when she heard that. Nevertheless, the Heretic Questioner's expression didn't change. He smiled and spoke as if he had said the most logical thing. I know you might be confused by your emotions right now. Even though it's only been a few weeks, you devoted your time and affection to your various races. It's natural that you wouldn't be able to accept them being reduced to slaves. But this is the fastest method. Fast. If I hadn't interfered, the people of this world would have been wandering aimlessly for thousands of years. However, due to my intervention, they were able to enter the ancient era after only 200 years. It was that fast. Heretic Questioner. Even if you're right, using religion and slavery like this is. I'm not saying my method is perfect. Black Dragon Master. Imagine just how many lives would have been sacrificed in the thousands of years that would have passed. Even if my civilization uses and overworks hundreds of thousands of slaves, it has only been a few hundred years. I will accelerate history even further. As the Heretic Questioner said this, the light of the many torches in the underground city seemed to shine down upon him. The huge dog statue cast its shadow on us. From the ancient era to the Middle Ages. From the Middle Ages to the modern era. And finally from the modern era to the present era. I can avoid all the mistakes, misunderstandings and slaughter that humanity experienced. There was a hint of certainty in the Heretic Questioner's voice. He also tried to convey his determination through his sad gaze. It was as though he was saying, I can do it. So everyone. Please surrender. I will stay in this world and guide them. 400 years. No, in just 360 years, I will raise them to the same level our civilization has reached. You intend to stay here for another 360 years? Yes. Under the pillar which depicted the history of a single civilization, the Heretic Questioner smiled broadly. Trust me, everyone, and leave. 4. We had a meeting, but there wasn't any real conclusion. Some of our colleagues believed that we should entrust this stage to the Heretic Questioner, while others strongly opposed it. In the end, we discussed for more than 2 hours but we weren't able to reach a consensus. Let's take a look at how our races are doing first. Everyone is gradually becoming more agitated. I made a suggestion. If this continues, it'll just become an emotional argument. So let's go see how those kids are living. Then we'll each make our own decision. Let's meet back here tomorrow. Okay? My companions all nodded at my words. We all held back our groans and sighs as we scattered to search for the areas where our races were staying. Naturally, I headed to the place where the goblins were staying. Most of the goblins lived in the salt mines. That's it for today's daytime work. Rhyme. Everyone, go home. Except for the supervisors, you molds can't move around outside. Line up. In an orderly manner. The snails swung their tentacles. Flinching, the goblins drew back and entered pits that were dug right beside the mines. These pits were the only accommodation given to the goblins. I was at a loss for words. I was so speechless that something like a moan escaped from my lips. This doesn't make sense. This is a pit. I know how much these kids like mud. How can they live in this place that has nothing but a salty smell? At the very least, they'd prefer to live in a damp place.
Yeah.
Behu Ryong muttered from behind me. They're even scavenging for water, too. Hey! One of two goblins came out from the hundreds of pits. These goblins had red bands around their necks and water jars at their waists. Supervisors. The leaders of each pit had to come out and get water on their own. Kerr. The supervisors were generally older females. I understood right away why these older females were chosen as the supervisors. Why are these two not in the dorm? Kirk, when we're not with them, the children start to cry. Look, Kerr. TCH. The snail overseers had ordered that no goblin apart from the supervisor was allowed to wander around outside. However, that didn't stop the older females from bringing their young with them. If an older female was chosen as the supervisor, then they could bring up to 2 children with them, which meant that 2 more jars of water could be filled. Gork. Water. Coo, water. The young goblins jumped into the spring water in the cave with a splash. Splash, splash. While the children swam, the females drew the water. They were using unfired clay jars. These jars were so weak that they would immediately shatter if they were dropped. But for the goblins living in these hellish conditions, they were priceless treasures. So the supervisors were careful to prevent them from breaking. I became more and more speechless. The time to draw spring water was the only free time allocated to the goblins. During this rare break, the older female goblins mimicked the feel of mud by mixing dirt with the water, then they drew tattoos on the young goblin's skin with this rough mud. Gore. Gork, gork. The children enjoyed it very much. Some of the children also picked up dirt and rubbed it on the females' skins. These were more like squiggles than tattoos. Nevertheless, the older females didn't erase the children's drawings. It's time for nighttime work. Rhyme. The day's work continued. Don't slack off, you molds. The snail overseer urged them. The snails called the goblins molds. It was a slur. In the snail language, the word for mold was orc, which was similar to the sounds goblins made, so they gave them this name. Get out of the dorm. Don't waste my time. You lazy orcs. I was speechless at the cruelty of calling a race such a name simply because it was fun to say. Goblins weren't the only ones called by slurs. The sprites were stubby horns. The vampires were leeches. And when it came to the ocean race, it was simply fish. Under the oppression of the snails, the other tribe's special traits had become points of ridicule. Get to work. Get to work on your night shift. Clang. Wielding stone hammers, the goblins pounded on the rock salt. The rock salt obtained from the mines was very large and hard. It was the goblins' duty at night to break these rocks into sizes that were easy to eat. Kerr. Kerk. Kerr. The rock salt had a heavy smell as it was broken. It smelled similar to rotten eggs. Clang. 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 The goblins continued to pound rock salt for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. All while having to endure that horrid stench. Care. From a distance, the goblins looked like they were swinging laundry sticks. However, if you looked closely, you'd just see that it was the goblins' hammers that had worn out. As the rock salt broke, so did their fingernails. Blood flowed from their wrinkled fingers, and the dust from the rock salt settled on wounds. But the goblins simply groaned every now and then without stopping, as though they were used to it. Rhyme. The snail overseer looked up. There was a single hole in the ceiling of the underground cavern. Through it, sunlight poured in during the day, and moonlight at night. Now, stars were visible in the night sky. That's all. That's all for tonight, Rhyme. Miners, return to your lodgings. Put all the hammers back in place. There were about 50 molds who had hammers. Don't forget. 50 molds had hammers. The goblins returned to their pits with their heads down. Cur. Gore. 2 water jars were waiting for the goblins when they returned to the pit, as well as a few fish that looked like carp. These were fish that had been caught by the mermaid fishermen. Slaves who lived in the water caught fish to feed the slaves living in the caves. Smoke from the grilling fish rose up from every pit. 1, 2, 3, 4, several hundred fires were lit at the same time. The young goblins kept reaching for the fish before it was done. Tiring from mining stone salt all day, their mothers simply tapped the children on the back with touches weaker than a fly. Nevertheless, the children were hungry. Eventually, the first few pieces of fish were given to the children, who ate them hurriedly. They always burn the things they intend to eat, Rhyme. The snails who watched over the night shift chuckled among themselves. That's because their digestive system isn't as developed as ours. They are just a bunch of savages. How could you burn your food? By the way, we have to send a new candidate to the Colosseum soon. It was night. The goblins gradually fell asleep. And the snails that watched over them from watchtowers also fell asleep. Apart from the drunken people in the distance who could be heard every now and then, the underground city descended into silence. At this point, I had already made up my mind. It seems I'll have to apologize to Raviel. I muttered softly. Behurayung crossed his mind as he realized what I was thinking. You intend to go back?
Yeah.
If I go back and talk to the heretic questioner, I should be able to create a new future. What if talking to him doesn't work? Then I'll just have to talk to him some more. In any case, I'll have 200 years to do it, won't I? Behurayung wrinkled his nose. I don't think you should. Why? Do you agree with what the heretic questioner said? No, it's not like that. How do I explain it so a bastard like you can understand? Behurayung scratched his head. Hey. For example, let's say I'm your child. Huh? It's an example, an example. Don't look at me with that stupid expression. Anyways, pretend that I'm your child, and I went to school, but when I got home, you found out I got beat up. Would you go back a day to get rid of the fact that I got beaten up? What are you talking about? Think about it from my perspective. Behurayung looked me in the eye. Let's say I had an accident. Or I died somehow. Then it's natural for you to return. No, you wouldn't even hesitate to return. You'll die once and save my life. Understand? No, what are you talking about now? But what if you go back a day because something happened and then you found out it was unnecessary? Don't you think that would be a bit messed up? I'm the one who has a problem, so why are you the one freaking out and regressing? I'm sure you wouldn't even give me a chance. What chance? A chance to beat the bastards that beat me up. This is something you should be familiar with. You experienced a similar situation just a few months ago. But trust them. Who? Yourself. Behurayung responded calmly. And the little ones you raised. As I pondered, the rats in the cave squeaked. Then, after a long while had passed, "Ha!" Bei Hurayong suddenly spoke up. "Hey, zombie. Look at that. Ha! There. The goblins." I turned my head in the direction he was pointing. What are they doing when they should be asleep? I was surprised. Goblins were sneaking out of their pits. There were about 1 to 2 goblins per pit. After confirming that their overseers were asleep in their watchtowers, the goblins slowly and carefully walked in a certain direction. Oh my! Are they headed back to that cave? The goblins walked into the salt mine. The inside of the mine had been intricately carved like an ant nest. The snail overseers, who were relatively vulnerable to salt, only commanded the slaves from outside the mine. They never came this deep. Kurr. Kirk, kurr. The goblins kept their voice low as they walked. The deeper they went, the narrower the passage became, and the lower the ceiling. However, the goblins continued to walk along this path as though they had done it many times before. Ha! The corners of Bei Hurayong's lips curled up slightly. See that? They built a secret passage under the noses of their oppressors. 2nd underground floor. 3rd underground floor. 4th underground floor. The goblins descended into the depths of the mine. There were hundreds of intersections connected to the passage. If someone came down here without knowing the way, it was possible that they would get stuck here for the rest of their life. Kurr. Finally, after traveling for about an hour, they reached their destination. Kerk, kurr. Kerr. In the dark cavern, the flame of a torch flickered every now and then. The figures of the goblins were barely discernible in the light. Ho! Bei Hurayong was surprised. Would you look at that? I was right, wasn't I? They are also people. They won't just wait for someone to come save them. Perhaps it was responding to Bei Hurayong's words. But the tower's voice sounded in my ear at that moment. The goblin race has created a secret assembly.